What a bonus for the crowd here in Wisbech to see, for my money, the most exciting prospect in British boxing at the moment. Nigel Benn in the golden trunks. And that is
one of the fastest, most devastating knockouts you will ever see in a boxing ring. It took just 16 seconds for Nigel Benn to KO 42-fight veteran Ian Chandler, a man that had previously never been knocked out in the first round. Actually, he'd never tasted the canvas in the first round. In fact, even though he was a considerably low-caliber opponent compared to the likes of a rising star in Nigel Benn, this was only the 6th time he had actually lost a fight by knockout and the first by an actual KO rather than a TKO. But what was it that made him fall so quickly? The power? The speed? Perhaps just a man well out of his depth in competition? Well, yeah, all of those things are an obvious factor, but today we'll be taking a look at a side to these quick blowouts that I feel are often overlooked when being analyzed back.
All the way, mate, all the way. Now you might start believing in the Dark Destroyer. Start believing I'm number one, second to no one.
For today's experiment, we'll be focusing our attention strictly on 3 participants: Nigel Benn, as seen earlier, former 2-weight world champion Gerald McClellan, and lastly, the heavyweight wrecking machine, Iron Mike Tyson.
And I came out and I was confident. I knew the fight. I felt it deep in my heart. I was going to stop him in the first round.
For the people that are not fully aware of the 3 chosen boxers, all 3 were world champions. They all have an extremely high KO percentage, and they all stopped opponents at a level I would consider to be world class in comparison to the weight class at each given time period. This is important for us to accurately measure our 3 hidden secrets of success without having a mismatch in the level of competition to build a cloud of doubt over our choice of selection.
the script again.
Check it, I stay jeweled up, pockets rolled up, from banks I held up. Plenty bitch ass niggas, big L stuck. I never catch cold feet when I hold heat.
The first and most obvious thing these guys share is the attribute of power.
He's come back for more. Not much longer.
Nigel Benn retired with a record of 42 wins and 35 knockouts, with a staggering 22 KO streak at the start of his career. Gerald McClellan finished his career with 31 wins, 29 knockouts, and an interestingly high amount of fights stopped in the first 2 rounds.
Right to the body, down. Unheard of.
Mike Tyson, as I'm sure many of you are aware, put to sleep 44 of his 50 opponents, and to defy previous rounded statistics, he often dealt with the higher level of competition the same way he dealt with the journeyman while on the rise.
Did you have any premonition that it would end this fast?
My trainer told me before I left, I bet both of our person that you knock him out in the first round. And so I went out and knocked him out in the first round.
But if all it took was supreme punching power, speed, technique, and other various common factors, why didn't fighters like Floyd Mayweather, Bernard Hopkins, Sugar Ray Leonard, and James Toney have more knockouts, and in particular, early knockouts?
I believe that people say it's physical and things like that. I feel like 95% of boxers bent them.
They certainly had an abundance of skill and technique over 95% of their opponents, and despite popular belief, could all punch hard in their own ways. Granted, maybe not as hard as our participants today, but I can guarantee you, if they all teed off on a stationary target with a power tracker, the differences between the scores wouldn't have been so far between. I never really paid much attention to this over the years, to be honest, but about 6 or 7 months ago, a boxing channel from the YTBC or LDBC community, who for some reason the name I've forgotten, but I think was from a channel called Fair Shake Boxing, he made a very cool video in response to the Gerald McClellan piece I put out a while back, which, by the way, raised over $4,000 for his cause. Anyway, in his video, he pointed out some key factors to why, in his opinion, he thinks that Gerald would have beaten every active middleweight on the planet today. And aside from the obvious crushing punching power and ridiculously long reach, he explained how he was in awe of how thoroughly he warmed up before a fight.
Of the fighters I have trained, he probably had the biggest mean streak of all of them.
It's hard to find too much footage of this on his behalf, but you could always see the sweat dripping off his nose as he walked to the ring, fully focused on the task ahead, keeping his body moving, never giving his muscles a chance of going cold.
This is round 1, scheduled for 12 for the WBC Middleweight Championship. Jay Bell in the white trunks, he's the challenger, and the trunk. And look at this! We just did receive a word that this indeed was the fastest knockout in middleweight championship history.
This was an older version of Mike Tyson the night he obliterated Lou Savarese in the first round and then gave that all-time classic interview.
Vicious and most ruthless champion there's ever been.
Notice Tyson is often glancing up at the screen as American teammate Zab Judah gets the decision. It's pumping him up. He's twisting and pivoting his body, shadowboxing with real intent, rather than letting his mind slip to the attention of the fight on the screen and easing off, which is something you see very often today.
Little Wayne and Justin Bieber flanking Money Mayweather.
The infamous night of June 27, 1988, Tyson was facing the 31-0 undefeated champion Michael Spinks in a huge unification bout. The pre-fight antics were all over the place. Former Tyson manager Bill Caton awkwardly had the camera focused on him the very same day Tyson's newly crowned wife Robin Givens had filed a lawsuit against him. Spinks' team were in a huge kerfuffle over Tyson's allegedly dodgy hand wraps, but while everything was going on, Mike was shadowboxing away like a man possessed. He even punched a hole in the wall that echoed through to the opponent's dressing room. Scary stuff. And despite boxing analysts like Sugar Ray Leonard giving Spinks a genuine chance to win, the fight was over in less than half a round.
And he's down again and in serious trouble.
Once again, it's not easy getting pre-fight footage for Nigel Benn, but he is undoubtedly one of the most energetic pre-fight boxers you'll ever see walking to the ring. He just had an absolute aura of destruction around him. When he faced Iran Barkley in 1990, his world-class, durable opponent had never tasted the canvas in round one in his entire career, and that's after fighting guys like Michael Nunn, Thomas Hearns, and Roberto Duran. He had actually only ever been stopped once in his previous 31 fights, and that was by TKO. But just watch how a pumped-up Ben destroys him in the opening seconds.
He really enjoyed that, seen by a couple of times. Well, oh my God, he's done him on the ropes in the first minute. It shook him right to the boots, but Barkley there had to go down, and he stopped it already. Carlos. What a body shot! Oh, magnificent left to the body. Was it low? Was it low?
You're probably wondering how the intimidation is in any way a secret to early fight success. Well, it's not, but the secret comes from the fact you don't have to be born a natural intimidator. In fact, Tyson is often regarded as the most intimidating boxer ever, but I really don't think it was him being his true self. Take a look at this
It
clip.
wasn't about the hugging for 12 rounds, because he was trying to impress his Englishmen out here. And I'm just convinced, you know what I mean? These fellas, I dare them challenge me with their somewhat primitive skills. They're just as good as dead.
This was a very famous Tyson interview clip from his career. We have shared it a bunch of times in videos, but I have always felt it wasn't natural. The way Mike went from hugging Bruno, paying him respect for his punching power and no-fear attitude, to then saying those infamous words didn't seem right.
Me with their somewhat primitive skills. They're just as good as dead.
I might be wrong, but I think Tyson pre-planned to say this, and the way he stutters and changes direction of the interview does kinda back it up. I guess what I'm trying to say is whether Iron Mike was actually just a genius badass or not is irrelevant. You can easily trick an opponent and the fans into thinking you're an intimidating beast without actually being one.
Thompson is 25, 6'4", 264 pounds. This is his debut in Pride.
You might remember what I said about AJ in my Dark Side video I uploaded recently. The way he walked to the ring and flexed his muscles about in his early fights was way more intimidating from what we've seen from him since winning a title. And despite a lot of people thinking I was just hating on him, I honestly felt that he would see a difference in how his opponents would react in the opening rounds. Do I think Joshua is a natural intimidator? No. But it doesn't mean he should stop trying to prove me otherwise.
I'm a beast now.
Nigel Benn, on the other hand, is a natural badass to me. This wasn't the case for his entire career, but from the period around 1990 to 1995, he was one of the scariest opponents you could possibly face in world boxing. The evil ring walk music that sounded like something The Undertaker would come out to, the muscle flexes, eye-to-eye stare downs, just an overall nasty piece of work to deal with.
British boxing at the moment, Nigel Benn.
Secret number 3 only works for people that already carry a great deal of punching power. A huge mistake big punchers often make is to continue focusing a great deal of their training on trying to increase the attribute that is already at its peak. Gennady Golovkin is an example I'll use, as it seems whenever training clips of him are released, 90% of the time it's him on the pads or the aqua bag trying to increase that dreadful punching power that is quite clearly way above what's needed to knock out his next opponent. I don't want to focus on him too much though, as I've never been in the gym with him on a standard day of training, and he certainly does have a lot in the way of skill sets outside of power. But the point I'm trying to make is, when you have reached a level of punching power that is proven to be enough to KO some top-level opponents, you really need to focus a large majority of your training on technique and how to land your sweetest punch on your upcoming opponent. Mike Tyson was a great example of putting technique at the forefront of his training. Luckily, we have hundreds of old training tapes from Mike to show this.
That's it, there you go. Now you got, again. Who's the last guy to stop? Time.
I say this without diminishing modern-day trainers, who I can honestly say know a million more things than I do on this matter. But look at how Customato, Kevin Rooney, and Teddy Atlas used to prepare him, constantly putting him in positions where he would need to adapt to an opponent to be able to release that amazing power he already has. The same can't really be said for Ben and McClellan. They were never better boxers than Tyson in terms of technique, but in many of their early knockouts, they did show a great understanding of when to throw the punch that they knew would be the one to end it.
Anthony Logan backs Ben up. Ben slips once again. He fights back and he catches him with a fantastic left. Well, Nigel Benn, you just can't count this man out. Logan out. The fight's all over. It's finished in the second round.
Thanks for watching, fight fans. If you enjoyed this video today, please remember to press the like button and make sure to subscribe if you're new around here. Until next time, this is Boxing Legends TV, signing off.